joining me on my channel, Unmodern Living. I'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button in the bottom corner. Today I'm going to be chatting about raspberries and different varieties of red raspberries specifically. There certainly are black raspberries and white raspberries, but in this garden there's only 2 varieties of red raspberries. Now I'm in my parents' backyard today because they have the best summer crop of raspberries I think I've seen pretty much ever. So these are the Summer Bearing Raspberries, and as you can see they are loaded with fruit, ready to go. Summer Bearing Raspberries produce all of their fruit in a relatively short amount of time, probably 2 weeks. It'd be about the most that you're going to get this great production of fruit all in one go. These are a Boyne variety raspberry. That's a pretty common kind to have in southwestern Ontario for a summer bearing raspberry. These canes need to be pruned after, usually they get pruned when they're dormant, so either late fall or early spring. I believe they did their pruning in March this year. And you need to prune the old growth that's already produced its berries. So the reason that you have to let these get so big is that they produce fruit on the second year's growth. So there's some canes in here, you can see these they're nice and tall, they're big guys sticking up here. They have no fruit on them. That's because they're new canes this year and they won't produce fruit until next year. But that also means that some of these older canes are going to die off and they need to be trimmed out. So they get cut off right at the base of the plant, and you can tell which are the older canes because the wood is like brittle and it just visibly looks different. It doesn't look nice and supple. So the old canes have to go to make room for the new growth. So the canes that are the first year, like next spring, these canes will get left and they'll produce fruit. The old canes will get trimmed out and then new canes will come again for the following year's production. The other reason that these canes are producing so well this year is they used a dormant spray, a fruit spray on them, which helps to get rid of some bugs that do some damage sometimes in the early spring. And it's just a bumper crop, absolutely amazing. Now we're going to walk this way a little bit down the garden because they also have fall bearing raspberries. And fall bearing canes are generally a heritage variety cane, and they're coming, but check out the difference. So these canes are nowhere near production yet. They're not going to start producing fruit till probably September sometime. I think mine at home usually start producing just around Labor Day, give or take a little bit. And they're going to get just as big as their neighbors, and they will have as much fruit. But the one thing about the heritage variety canes that I find from my own garden is that they produce probably the same amount of fruit but over a longer period of time. So you don't go to the garden and get like this gigantic picking, but you get, if you like to eat raspberries, you get a lot of raspberries over just a bigger window of time with the heritage variety. Now the heritage variety, because they produce fruit on the first year's growth, they get trimmed back almost to ground level. There's probably usually about that much sticking out every year. So that's why it takes them so much longer to catch up, because they got to start from scratch every spring, where these guys, you pretty much leave them in place. I think they probably trim back a little bit on these canes, but not much, because they want them to produce fruit this year. So that's the big difference between the 2 varieties of raspberries. Like I said, the summer bearing are going to bear a lot of fruit at one time, but they're really only going to bear it for a shorter period of time, where your heritage variety or your fall bearing, ever bearing raspberries produce the same amount of fruit over a longer period of time and later in the year. Yeah, if you're a real raspberry lover, you're going to want to have both kinds of canes. They multiply like crazy. So this patch actually needs to have a whole lot dug out around the sides of it. If you don't dig it out, you're just going to get like this massive raspberry patch, but you definitely do want to thin out your canes, and you can share them with friends and family. Usually I have a few takers when I have a little post about whether or not people would like me to share some raspberry canes. So I'm sure you can do the same. Lots of garden centers, including the one I'm at here in Ridge, we carry them in the early spring as unrooted canes, and it's a little bit cheaper way to buy them because you get them as a freshly dug cane, and then you can plant them yourself right away. Or if you get in later in the season, most garden centers again pot them up, and then you have to buy them as a potted plant. A little more costly, so it depends on how many you want. You might want to try to order them in as a bare root variety. A lot of people plant the heritage variety, myself included, because you get to harvest them when it's not so hot out. Raspberries are very picky when you're harvesting, and if you wait until fall, you can wear long sleeves and long pants a little easier, and also there's fewer black bugs in the fall months of the year when the heritage variety is at its production. Right now, you just want to be probably picking your raspberries in the evening or in the morning because it's getting really hot out during the day. So that's my scoop about raspberries. If you do like raspberries, check out my recipe for a raspberry custard pie. It's one of my grandma's recipes, and like I said, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel and send me any questions or feedback about what you'd like to see in the future.